view, saying that something is a product of the human imagination and not an objective reality doesn't mean that it's not important. It doesn't mean that it's not good. You know, to take an obvious example, the laws of football are obviously a human invention. Nobody would claim they are natural or eternal or coming from physics or whatever. We invented the laws of football. And still, football is a wonderful thing. It can bring a lot of joy, a lot of interest, a lot of good things to the lives of millions of people. It's the most popular sport in the world. I'm not against playing football or having fierce loyalty to your football team just because it's actually exists only in the human imagination. And it's the same with nations and nationalism. Yes, we created them. They are stories that exist only in our own minds. They are not an objective physical or biological reality, but it doesn't mean that they are not important, and it doesn't mean that they are not at least potentially beneficial. I think that nationalism is one of the best inventions of humankind. At the core of nationalism is the idea that I should be loyal to complete strangers that I've never met in my life, and that I should care about them enough to take care of their welfare and education and health and so forth. So I don't think that nationalism is rooted in the biological tendency of apes and humans to live in communities, because apes, chimpanzees, gorillas, and also ancient Homo sapiens, they lived in very, very small bands in which everybody knew everybody else. They were intimate communities. The amazing thing about nationalism is that it enables you to care not about 50 individuals you actually know. It enables you to care about 50 million individuals that you never met and you will never meet, and nevertheless you are willing to pay taxes so that somebody on the other side of the country would get a good healthcare, and that's a wonderful thing. Nationalism can turn ugly, just like football, when the main thing becomes hating the others and not loving us. Well, if you think that nationalism is about hating other people, then that's a very negative turn, but it doesn't have to be like that. Just as if you think that in football the main thing is to fight with the fans of the other teams, then it goes in the wrong direction. Now, I think that you can't have democracy, at least in the world of today, without a strong sense of nationalism. Because if you don't feel connected, if you don't feel that you have a shared fate with the other people in your country, there is absolutely no reason in the world to accept the verdict of democratic elections. It makes sense only if you think that they care about you and you care about them. If you think that your political rivals, they may be stupid even, but they are not evil. They are not there to get you. If that's the case, then there is no democracy. It can be dictatorship, it can be civil war, but no democracy. Now, when I look at the world today, one of the other things that strikes me about the rise of populists is that they are not nationalist. They are not really patriotic at all. If you think that patriotism is hating foreigners, then yes, they are great patriots. But if you think that nationalism is loving the other people in your country, they are the opposite of patriots. They are trying to break the nation on purpose into hostile tribes. You see it with Trump in the US, with Bolsonaro in Brazil, with Netanyahu in Israel, so many places, that they are tribal leaders, not nationalist leaders. The main project of the nation, the main difficulty of the nation historically, is not fighting against foreigners. That's easy. The difficult thing is to get 50 million people, or in the case, say, of India, more than 1 billion people, with different languages and religions and social class, to nevertheless feel connected. That's the big project of nationalism. And people like Trump and Bolsonaro and Netanyahu, they are working against this project, not in favor of it. I look at the US today, And what I see is that Americans today hate and fear one another much more than they hate or fear the Russians or the Chinese or anybody else on the planet. 50 years ago, Democrats and Republicans were both afraid that the Russians are coming to destroy our way of life. Now, the Democrats are afraid that the Republicans are coming to destroy our way of life, and the Republicans have the same fear about the Democrats. And the nation is collapsing. In some countries, the collapse of the nation leads to just civil war. Syria, Iraq, Libya, Yemen, there are many examples. In the US, in Brazil, in Israel, it's not civil war yet, but you see that people hate their fellow citizens much more than they hate or fear anybody else. And it's not an accident. It's fueled deliberately by these populist leaders. So, if you ask me what's the definition of populist, that's the key. They divide. The populists are people, leaders, who say the country is divided into two camps. There are the real people, my supporters, and there are the enemies of the people. All those on the other side of the political aisle. They are not really part of the people. They are enemies. They are traitors. And this runs contra to the nationalist project. And this is also, I think, one of the reasons that democracy is in trouble, is collapsing. And why is it happening all over the world? I don't know. I'm not sure. But I would characterize the crisis we are seeing with populism. It's not a resurgence of nationalism. It's a collapse of nationalism, at least if we understand nationalism in the sense of loving your compatriots and not hating foreigners.